Hey, what's up, everybody? Another video by the Zeal Brothers here, and want another make another shout out. This is for all the fans of the nose hairs. They're gonna be shining again, once again. So, hey, this video is gonna be about socialism, and we're seeing a rise in socialism in our country, and there's a rise in socialist ideas, and so this is something that needs to be talked about because um, socialism is itself immoral. Now, let's first talk about how it doesn't work. And socialism is the system of government of the economy where you attempt to equalize outcomes. And what you'll do is you'll redistribute the wealth and ownership of property, ownership of monies from people who have earned it to people who have not earned it. And you take wealth from people who have it and give it to people who don't have it. And so there's this transfer of wealth that's going on. And what it attempts to do is it attempts to take away the inequities that we find in a capitalist system, and it tries to just right those inequities. So there's a few things when you talk about socialism. The first thing is, do the inequities need to be righted? And that's a question that you have to ask for yourself, because here's the thing. You can never truly right all inequities. And the world is not fair. These are two truths that socialism really can't deal with. But it is something that if you're going to be a socialist, and maybe you watching this, and maybe you are somebody who's a fan of Bernie Sanders or a fan of one of the squad, the reason why these ideas don't work is because you first have to justify why inequity is itself bad. Right? Why is it bad that Bill Gates has so much money, but somebody else doesn't have so much? You'd have to justify that, because then I could turn around and ask you, why is somebody beautiful? Why is somebody born beautiful and somebody else has moles all over their face? Somebody else is born with deformities. Why is that okay? Now, they can't get to that. And the second question is how does socialism deal with the fact that there are always limits? In economics, there's a rule called scarcity. I'm not talking about a scarcity mindset. I'm talking about real scarcity. What scarcity means is that there is nothing that is infinite, except for the desires of men. And so when you talk about infinity, in limited supplies of things, let's just think about lakefront property. Any society is going to have a limit of lakefront property. And so it doesn't matter how you divvy it out. Only a few people can have it. And let's say there's a lake that's small enough that only 10 houses can be around that lake. Well, in a capitalist society, we know who's going to get those houses. It's going to be rich people, right? Rich people are going to get those 10, and they're going to be the ones who can afford the 10 biggest prices. The rich people who want to live there are going to be the ones who get it. Now, what happens in a socialist system? They have the same limits. So 10 people are going to get it. Now, what happens in a socialist system is that the 10 people who get it have to be chosen. And what happens to be chosen? Well, you have to be chosen. You have to be, in some sense, related to the people who are in power. And I know people don't want to talk about that. They say, well, that's not really a part of socialism. That doesn't have anything to do with socialism. But socialism has to deal with limits. And if you are in a socialist country, or if you've ever been in a communist nation, you'll note that there are people who are connected to those who are in power who are filthy rich. And then there are other people who sit in there and they stand in bread lines for hours. They starve. So when you talk about socialism, what is socialism? It doesn't deal with scarcity, and it doesn't deal with the question of how can you ever make life fair? It's something that you can never do, right? There are 4 reasons that socialism is immoral, though. Not only does it not work, but it's immoral. The first one is this. It ruins personal ownership. In other words, it's another form of theft. Let us think about this way. If I go out and I work hard and I earn $1,000, you don't have a right to take that from me. That is mine. I own it. If I have property, I own it. But it doesn't matter what government you have. If it is socialist, it will attempt to take what is mine. Not just through taxation, because I think there can be some problems morally with some forms of taxation, but it's more than that. It is simply just will take it from some and give it to others. That's immoral. The Bible talks about this principle. He who does not work should not eat. Now that seems harsh, but the truth of the matter is that everybody can contribute to the well-being of society, but many people do not. Many people are takers. We find this attitude even sinking into our churches. There are a lot of people who come to church and they take. They ask what ministries we can do for their kids. They ask what ministries we can do for them. They ask what ministries we can do for singles. And they never show up when we run those ministries. So these people are takers, never givers. They don't tithe. They can barely give an encouraging word, but they always posting on Facebook saying they discouraged. The reason you're discouraged is because you take so much and you give so little. The real encouragement is found in when you are giving of yourself to somebody else. And when you give of yourself to somebody else, you will find that you will be encouraged because people will look at your good works and commend you for that. And if they don't commend you for it, you can have satisfaction in yourself that you are doing something right. You can encourage yourself. But when you're not doing anything but sitting in your own pity party, putting statuses on Facebook, trying to make us pity you, you won't be encouraged because you're not doing anything productive. You shouldn't be encouraged. You should be discouraged because there's something different you should be doing. The second reason why socialism is immoral is because of tyranny. Socialism has to be enforced because it doesn't work. So imagine that I'm a billionaire and I got all this money. But what you're going to do is you're going to come for mine. And what you're going to do when you come for mine is you're going to come with guns blazing because I'm not going to give you mine. So you're going to take my property. You're going to take my mansions. And some people might cheer that on. But the reason you're cheering that on is because you yourself are an immoral and you get pleasure in the hurting of others. In other words, you're a thug. So when you look at somebody else and you love seeing their stuff get taken, you are just a piece of garbage, a piece of crap. And I say that with all diplomatic intentions. But that's the truth. And you need to look at yourself in the mirror when you enjoy somebody else's pain. People say things like, well, I hope they tax the rich. How does that make your life better? I always ask that question. How does that improve your life? If you can not make a direct connection between what is happening to somebody else negative and what should happen positive to you, you shouldn't be cheering it on. So government tyranny has to happen because that's the only way for socialism to be established and to be kept. And oftentimes when socialism is put in place, it creates these shortages. And the reason that there are shortages is because markets exist whether you want to accept them or not. It's no different than if you go to a party and it's a whole bunch of girls there and you wanted a few guys. You're going to get a lot of attention. On the other hand, I've been at parties when there's been a whole bunch of dudes. We call them sausage parties, right? Whole bunch of dudes, just a few girls. The average girl looked beautiful at that party because the market is saying we want girls. And there's only a few. So guess what? All the girls that are there are at a premium. It's just how markets work. People behave according to market conditions, no matter what they may say. But tyranny attempts to try to establish their theory and enforce it, even when it doesn't work in reality. And so what happens is when you have somebody who says, I don't want this, the government say, yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And they try to force it on you. And what it happens is you get a lot of what you don't want, but you get shortages of what you do want. And what happens with that is people become unhappy. When people become unhappy, they enforce socialism by just kicking people down and beating people and making people disappear. And that happens in every communist government that you see, whether that be China, Cuba, old Soviet Union, any Soviet nation that you will see, any communist nation that you will see, you'll start to see that they beat up on their people or they cut their freedoms. There's a third thing, and that is this. You get what you don't earn. This goes against the concept of grace. Now, people might say, well, yes, that is grace. Grace is getting what you don't earn. No. Here's what grace is. Grace is that God gives you something that he earned, and he gives it out of his goodwill. What does socialism do? Socialism steals what you did not earn and gives it to people who don't deserve it because they didn't earn it. And they're not grateful for it. They think they got a right to it. So what you are doing is you're really feeding greed. People talk about capitalism as feeding off of greed, and nobody can deny that it is. It's not perfect. It simply coincides with humans' evil intention for greed, and it uses that as a machine to make more money and be more productive. Social capitalism is not a perfect system, because people aren't perfect. There is no system that is going to be able to completely clamp down on sin. So if you go in a capitalist system and some people want child pornography, there will be a market that supplies child pornography. That's just the way it is. And we can hate that fact that people want that. But the truth of the matter is capitalism gives people what they want. So rather than saying, man, capitalism is so evil, what you should turn around and say, people have evil desires and capitalism lets them meet it. Communism is no different. All it does is it doesn't let the people on the bottom, the common man, get what they want, but the people on the top do. And then the last thing why socialism is immoral is you will see in every socialist dominated country a rise in atheism, oppression of the church and of religion, and a predisposition to mass extermination. So you look at something like Hitler and the Jews, and I know people want to say that Hitler was a fascist, but if you look at Hitler's party, it's a national socialist party. That's what the Nazis stood for. You look at Russia. These are communists. Stalin killed so many people. He killed more Jews than Hitler did. You look at Pol Pot. You look at all these different communist leaders. And communism is simply a form of socialism. When you look at all these socialist governments, what they will do is they tend to oppress Christian thought. They tend to oppress free thought. And you got to ask yourself, is a system so good when it has to oppress people who speak against it? Can it stand on its own merits and still be good? So socialism is immoral. And I want you to think about that fact as you also look at some other videos that we're going to put up.